Well, hello scrappers, Mike here. Welcome back to my channel. And as promised in an earlier video, we are going to do some gold fingers. Gold finger! I can't sing like Shirley Bassey. I can't sing like anybody. Anyway, yeah, we're going to do some gold fingers. We're going to recover gold from these fingers. What I've got here is a mix of fingers. I would say probably 2/3 of it from me and a third of it sent in by a fellow named Stan in a package he sent me. He sent me a bunch of fingers, but I have added to it. I've cut the fingers off of a lot of PC cards and boards and a whole lot of RAM sticks. So I've got a lot of close cut fingers here. Let's see how much we've got first of all. 632 grams. And yes, I know I'm weighing them in the bag. Every time I do this, somebody chimes in the comments of the video and says, you know, you're weighing the bags. Yes, I know. This scale is not particularly sensitive, so the weight of the bags probably isn't even going to show up. So 632, well over half a kilo of fingers. Now, I'm not expecting to get a huge amount of gold out of these. In my experience, we're talking maybe a couple grams, 3 grams per kilo maybe. So just a few grams at the most I think we're going to get out of this. Although some of these fingers did come from power supplies, and they look like they're really thick gold. So we may do a little bit better than average. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so let me get these into a beaker, and we will contemplate methods for getting the gold off of these fingers, because there's a bit to contemplate. So I have several times in the past referred to fingers as sort of the low-hanging fruit of gold recovery. I think they're easy, but other people disagree with me. Some people think that they're bloody difficult and they have nothing but trouble with them. This one came from Stan. This one, it's got some solder on it, but we'll see what we can do anyway. We'll just leave it in there rather than try and trim it up some more. So anyway, there's all our fingers in there. So some people, like I say, have trouble with them, and I'm not sure why. I think they're easy. And there are multiple ways you can go with this. There are a lot of ways you can attack the fingers, okay? You can do salt and vinegar. That'll work. It takes a while, but that'll work. You could do AP solution. That'll work. Again, it takes a while, but it will work. Copper chloride, that'll work. That's basically what you get after AP solution gets old, is copper chloride. You can attack it with nitric acid. So, you know, if you have access to nitric acid, that'll work. So there's multiple ways to go about this. The main thing you're trying to do is the gold is plated onto other metals, and you're trying to dissolve those other underlying metals and then just release the little thin gold foils on top. So it's really not that difficult to do, and there are, like I say, multiple ways to go about it. That's one of those power supply fingers. Looks like it's got really thick gold on it. So, yeah, I think it's pretty easy, and I found a few shortcuts. We'll talk about them when we get further along to where they're important, all right? So we just got to figure out what method am I going to use to do this. Well, I'm kind of in a rush to get these done because in previous videos I've told you I've gone back to work at least part-time, so I don't have as much time out here in my outdoor lab as I used to have, so I'd like to get these done in a hurry. So I think that's going to do salt and vinegar and AP solution in. I don't think we're going to do those because this is going to take, you know, many days to a week or longer, especially since it's winter and it's cold right now. That's going to take a long time. So we're going to do something a little quicker. Now, in another previous video, I showed you how to make your own nitric acid, concentrated nitric acid, and I am really flush with nitric acid right now. I've got a lot of nitric acid, so I suppose we could just use nitric acid to do this, right? Well, maybe not. Making this nitric acid is kind of a pain in the butt, And I'd rather save it for stuff that specifically needs nitric acid. You know, working with silver, refining gold, other precious metals, palladium, that kind of stuff. I'd rather save it for that rather than use it on the fingers. So where does that leave us? Well, let's see if we can figure an alternate method to do this. Plus, I get a lot of requests from people to show them how to do this kind of stuff using easy to find chemicals. Okay, they either can't get nitric acid, don't want to pay for it, or just can't get it where they live. So people say, well, is there a way to do this with commonly available chemicals? Well, we talked about the salt and vinegar method. We talked about the AP solution method. Is there another method? I think there is. So let's try something a little different that I think is going to be quick and it's going to use commonly available chemicals in a lot of places. In some places you're not going to be able to buy these chemicals, I'm sure, but I think in most places you can. So what is this alternate method of which I speak, which doesn't use my precious nitric acid that I want to save for other stuff? Well, we're going to do what's called poor man's nitric acid. You have access to concentrated sulfuric acid and something that has a nitrate salt in it, like this has potassium nitrate in it. Then we can make what's called poor man's nitric acid in solution in there, and it'll do the same job as real nitric acid, but at a fraction of the cost. Now, I showed you in my Forbidden Chemistry series how to make these chemicals, and I'll put a link to that series in the upper right. I showed you how to make potassium nitrate, which unfortunately I've used all up, so I don't have any of my homemade potassium nitrate, but I have stump remover, which contains potassium nitrate. I showed you how to make concentrated sulfuric acid, and I showed you how to make nitric acid in that series. So, if you can't buy this stuff where you live, I showed you how to make it yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some potassium nitrate and we're going to take some concentrated sulfuric acid and we are going to make some poor man's nitric acid, and I think it will do a number on these fingers in here. I think it will dissolve all the base metal underneath the gold foils and liberate them just about as well as using real nitric acid at a fraction of the cost. So, like I said, I made this stuff, but I can go to any grocery store here in the U.S. and buy concentrated sulfuric acid. I don't have to make it. I can, and it's cheap. It's cheap, too. It's super cheap, a fraction of the cost of nitric acid if you can buy it. I can go to any hardware store and get stump remover that contains potassium nitrate. It's cheap. So, you don't have to waste a lot of money on nitric acid for this process. And if you can't get nitric acid at all where you live, well, this is a viable alternative. So let's get this in the fume hood and we will try some of our poor man's nitric alternative method here and see how it works. All right, there we are in the fume hood. Let me start out by putting some distilled water over it, or in this case, purified water, since distilled water occasionally is very hard to come by around here. Just enough to cover the fingers totally. All right, make sure everybody's submerged. All right. Next, I'm going to take some of this stump remover and I'm going to put it in there. And I'm not going to measure anything. I'm just going to sort of dump some in, all right? This is easy science, okay? Doesn't require measuring. I'm going to turn the heat on, just warm this stuff up. Next, we're going to put in some sulfuric acid, but first, before we do that, I'm going to turn the fume hood on because I got a feeling we're going to see a pretty immediate reaction once this stuff goes in. Ooh, doesn't it start bubbling? Look at that. Yeah. All right. And those bubbles probably contain a lot of nitrogen dioxide gas because what we've done basically is we've made some nitric acid in the liquid here. The concentrated sulfuric acid is going to steal the potassium from the potassium nitrate and donate a hydrogen ion to it. and that is going to make nitric acid, and that's what we've got going on here. And this reaction, I think, is going to just get more vigorous as this heats up, and the more of the potassium nitrate goes into solution as it heats up. I think we're going to see a pretty vigorous reaction, probably some clouds of brown-orange gas coming out. That'd be nitrogen dioxide. And I think all of the base metals holding those gold fingers on will probably be dissolved off by the end of the day today, if not sooner. So we'll just let it heat up and see what happens. I'll give you a look from time to time. Well, it's only been a few minutes, and getting some brown-orange gas accumulating in the top of the beaker. I don't know how well that's showing up to you, but I can see it in my eye. Got some pretty vigorous bubbling there. It's only just starting to warm up, so as it gets warmer, I'm sure the reaction will get much more vigorous, but it's working good. I'll show you the bubbling there. See it? Yeah, it's working good. So we're just going to let this cook for a while and see what happens. So this process has been going for, I would say, less than 20 minutes now. Let me see how warm it is. Maybe I need to turn the hot plate up a bit more. It's just barely above. It's just barely warm. So, but the liquid is turning distinctly blue-green. I don't know if that's visible. I'd say we're probably dissolving some copper and some nickel, maybe off of the under layers of the plating there, and I would say probably it won't be too much longer the way this is going. The fume production, I can actually see curls of brown orange fumes come out of the lip of the beaker from time to time. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing foil starting to float around in there in the not too distant future. So we're just going to let it run and let it do its thing. Maybe I'll go in and get some lunch and come back out and see what we got afterwards. Well, I was just heading into lunch, and out of the corner of my eye, oh, you can really see how green the liquid's got now. There's some gold foils floating in there. I saw one sort of moving around in the bubble currents. So yeah, the gold foils are starting to come off. We're only maybe a half hour into this, and the gold foils are starting to come off. So this is a method that works pretty darn well. So we're just going to let this go, and we'll check on it again a half hour or so after I have a quick lunch and see how it's going. I'll bet there'll be a lot more gold foils floating in there. Well, I was literally gone for about a half an hour. Have some lunch. Look what's happened. Wow. The liquid has gotten so much bluer. We're producing a lot of brown-orange gas. The bubbling is crazy. I think that's bubbling rather than boiling. I don't think it's hot enough to boil. I see a whole lot of loose foils in there. So this is working really, really good. So excellent, excellent. Just the way I was hoping. So I need to go to the hardware store. So I think I'm just going to let this go while I go to the hardware store and see what it looks like when I get back. I think we might get all these foils off today, which was my plan all along. Love it when a plan comes together. All right, I'm back from the hardware store. Wasn't gone very long. And wow, there's a lot of, I don't know if you can see that, gold foils collecting at the bottom. There's a lot of them loose in there. There's some floating on the surface. I still see quite a few attached to the fingers though, so we're just going to let this go. If it looks like the reaction is dying down, I can always put in a little more potassium nitrate and sulfuric acid and keep it going. But, I mean, we're still making brown fumes in there, so I think we're still doing good. Let's see here. I'd say we're not quite at boiling point, so I don't think really anything needs to be adjusted. I think we're just going to let it go. It seems to be working. I'm going to work on other stuff in the background and let it do its thing. We'll check on it again in a little bit. Alright, it's a little while later, and I'm just going to stir it up and see. Oh, I see. Yeah, there's still a lot of gold on some of these. This one right here looks pretty gold free, but some of them still have a lot on them. So, stirring it up is probably a good idea. Some of these are probably in dead areas of liquid where they're not getting really attacked by the poor man's nitric. So, I do see a lot of oils in there, but there's still, I'm seeing quite a few still stuck on the board pieces. But hopefully this stirring up will help. I'll stir it a few times here in the future and make sure everything gets a chance to react. Yeah, but then see the oils dancing on the surface there. There's definitely a lot of loose ones in there. That's good. It's working. Well, it's only a few minutes after I stirred it, but the brown fumes are back with a vengeance. So I'm thinking stirring it up has exposed more base metal to the liquid. So yeah, I'll stir it every time I wander by, or every 15, 20 minutes or so. And that should probably speed up the process. Something wonderful, I'm thinking. But for now, we're just going to let it cook. Oh, that's a lot better. I still see a little bit on there, but I would say the vast bulk of it, it looks like it is off, or in the process of peeling off. Probably just needs a little bit of mechanical agitation here to free it up. I might have done too much at once, too. But really, yeah, it's looking a whole lot better. There's still a little bit, like I say, it's stuck, but yeah, most of it's off. Okay. I think we are going to achieve my goal of getting the foils off today. That's what I wanted. I will let this stuff sit overnight, just to be sure. And we will come out tomorrow and deal with it. Now that's not gold on there. Those foils are all gone. Okay, good. I'll just let this sit overnight. Deal with it tomorrow. I may add an extra shot of sodium nitrate and sulfuric acid to it before I go into bed. But I'm gonna turn the heat off on this and let it cool down before I put any more sulfuric acid in it. You don't want to put sulfuric acid in a hot liquid because it generates a lot of heat as it goes in anyway, and it will flash boil immediately and spatter all over you. I've made that mistake before, trust me. So, yeah, but I think we're looking pretty darn good there. And certainly by tomorrow, when I'll have time to deal with this some more, I think all of the foils will be off and ready to be separated from the bulk of the material. All right, so we'll see you then. Okay, it is the next day. So this is sat overnight. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good, but now comes my least favorite part of this whole operation, okay? Separating the gold from the bits of circuit board here. First thing I'm going to do is I am going to decant off the liquid, trying not to pour off too much gold. I've only seen a couple of tiny little flecks go over. There's not much floating. And, well, one of the problems with doing this the way I did it is manifesting itself here. I'll give you a close-up look. If I just used straight nitric acid, we wouldn't have had this problem. Let me get this poured off first. Okay, and then I'll give you a look at what's going on here. See, I was afraid this would happen, seeing as it's winter and it got kind of chilly overnight. We've got copper sulfate crystals that have come out of solution in there. So that wouldn't have happened if we'd just been using straight nitric acid. So let me put some water in there and warm this up, and we'll see if we can dissolve those copper sulfate crystals and get them out of the mix too before we move on to the next step. I need to rinse this stuff anyway, so yeah, we'll just put some water in there and get this copper sulfate dissolved. Okay, so we're back in the fume hood. Put some water on it. I probably could just use regular tap water for this particular process. Basically, I'm just giving it a rinse at this point. Uh-oh. Huh. Wonder why they're stuck together. Anyway. Oh, these are packed in here tight. You know what it is? It's probably the crystals of copper sulfate that are locking them together. Let me put some heat to it, and we'll get that stuff dissolved and pour it off, and then we'll get to separating the gold from the circuit boards. But I want to get that copper sulfate out of there first. And I was afraid that was going to happen. It's happened to me before. Not a big deal. Just takes an extra step or so to get rid of it. All right, so this stuff has warmed up a little bit, just enough to get all of the little crystals of copper sulfate in there into solution. So that is a risk you run by using the poor man's nitric solution instead of real nitric acid. You could wind up with a lot of copper sulfate crystals in there, especially if you let the solution cool down too much. They will precipitate out. Now, I say it's a risk, but it's really not a bad thing. They're easy to get rid of, as you can see, just by warming the liquid. Just by adding some water to it and warming it up a little bit, I got rid of them. But copper sulfate has its own uses. So I've diluted this solution a lot with that extra water. But if I was to boil it down to, say, I don't know, half or a third of this volume and let it cool down again, I'd get the crystals back and I could harvest them. So that's a thought. That's one way to get the copper back out. So here we go. Now it's time for my least favorite part of the whole operation of dealing with fingers, and that is separating the gold foils from the bits of PC board in here. So let me get set up for that, and I'll show you how I do that. All right, so I've got a bowl here and a colander that fits inside it. Both thrift store purchases, by the way. I'm going to add some water to this setup. Just tap water at this point. Now, this colander has big holes in it. I want to give the gold in here every opportunity to go down through the holes and separate from the PC board debris. Well, it looks like a lot of gold, but I know from experience that, foils there's not that much gold here. Sure looks impressive, though. Okay, come on, get out of there when I'm done. So, we're just gonna wash these parts. Uh-oh. Yeah. Try not to make such a mess, though, especially when you're slopping gold on your workbench. I will have to clean that up and save the paper. Okay. But it is working. It is working. We're getting most of the gold down in there. So what I'm going to do is get a container. This will work. And I'm just going to make sure everything is free of gold. Come on, I don't want that kind of spray. There we go. And put it over in here. Just going to work our way through this. Make sure we get all the loose gold off. And into here. Get it off my fingers too, because it's sticking to my fingers pretty bad. And so far, it looks like it's still got gold on it, but it's not. It's not gold. It's just places where the gold was. So it looks like we've got all the gold loose. With 4-man's nitric, we didn't use up any of my precious homemade nitric acid. So that's great. That's available for other things, like purifying this stuff down the road. So let me go through here and get all of this stuff out of here, cleaned up, and then we will move on from there. Well, that was quite tedious, but it's done. All the gold, well, most of the gold's in here. The spray nozzle does a really good job of getting the gold off of this stuff as I take it out a little bit at a time. Unfortunately, it also does a really good job of spraying fine bits of gold all over my bench top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe it all up on the bench top, and I'm going to store this piece of paper with my filters and rags for eventual processing. I'll get as much of it in here as I can, but a lot of it's going to stick to the paper, I am sure. It's like gold leaf. It's very sticky. Once it touches something, it just wants to stay there. Yeah, I don't really need a gold leaf bench top. Get as much of this stuff up as I can. All right. So, like I said, it does a good job of getting the gold off. I only have one piece here, which on one side, well, a little bit on that side too, still has some gold fingers on it. I'm thinking this piece was down on the bottom of the beaker or something, and just maybe that side down against the bottom of the glass, and something else laying across it here. That piece just didn't get exposed to the chemicals that well, so the gold did not come off. I got some other pieces here that look like they still have gold fingers on them. That one's still got a little bit of gold on it, but I think it's coming off my fingers. Whatever metal they plated under the gold on these, it seems to be fairly resistant to nitric and sulfuric acid. So I'm not sure what metal that might be, but there's definitely no gold on it, because there's some gold on my finger, glove of my finger right there, and I can tell it's a very different color than what's left on there. So I don't know if you have an idea what they might have plated under the gold on some of these. Let me know. So trying to get the gold to float, or the floating gold to sink, the gold off my fingers, get it all in here, preferably on the bottom. And what I'll do is gently pour off this water. And we should see our gold. Uh-oh. I got more water here than beaker. But there's our gold down in there. I hope that's showing up. Let me get another container and pour off some more of this water, and we'll see how much gold we got. Here we go. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to filter this water because I think there's a little bit of gold floating in it. Probably not too much, but what the heck. I'll filter it and just throw the filter in with my filter and rag storage. Yeah, because I can see little tiny bits going over. It's probably not enough to worry about, but why waste it, right? Going to this much trouble. Okay. So there's our gold. Nice, huh? Very nice. Looks like a lot, but I'll bet it's not. I'll bet it's not. So where do we go from here? A lot of people would probably at this point melt it down and make a button. I've seen people do that. That's not what I'm going to do, though. We're going to go through a purification step here because for a couple reasons. First off, this is almost certainly not pure gold. It's an alloy of gold that's a little tougher than 24 karat gold because that would get rubbed off of these contacts really quickly if it was 24 karat gold. So this is going to be an alloy. It's going to be a little tougher. Still fairly soft metal, but not as soft as 24 karat gold. So we got some base metal in there. Plus there's all kinds of debris in there. Little bits and pieces of crud from the circuit boards. I want to get rid of that. So I think what we'll do is I'll put this stuff in a beaker and we'll dissolve it in Aqua Regia and purify it. And then we will drop it and we'll get some pretty darn pure gold, I'm thinking. So let me get a beaker to do that and I'll deal with all this wastewater later. All right, so let's see if we can get all this gold into this beaker here. And now that we're kind of in purification mode, I'm switching back to distilled water here. Not that it's going to matter too much, but we'll keep this stuff as clean as we can. There we go. That looks like almost every little bit of gold. Come on, you two. Get in there with your friends. There we go. Okay. That's it. All right, so let me pour off some more of this water. Floating gold again. Thank you. And then we'll go in the fume hood and we will do some Aqua Regia to this. Okay. Sure looks like a lot of gold, doesn't it? Let's see how much it really is. Into the fume hood. All right, let's get some Aqua Regia on this stuff. Let me get the fume hood going first. And we'll pour some muriatic acid on it. Looks like about 200 milliliters worth. That ought to be plenty to get all that gold in solution. Probably much more than actual needed. So now, here is where we can use my precious homemade red fuming nitric acid here. I'm going to put about 2 milliliters in. I will put more in if it's necessary. That might be enough to do the job. We'll see. Just lit it up. Some heat to it. Not too much. Don't want to boil it. Just want to warm it up. Speed up the reaction. And we'll see how long it takes to dissolve all that gold. Shouldn't be too long. And if it needs a little more nitric, I will put it in. Well, that didn't take very long. Just wandered off for a few minutes to gather up some stuff for a garage sale we're having tomorrow, and well, it looks like the gold is all in solution. I'll take a closer look at that to make sure that it's all in solution. Actually, you know what? It's not. I still see a couple pieces in there floating up, bubbling. So this needs to go a little while longer. I'm going to turn the heat off, though. I never turned it on higher than just slightly warm. But yeah, it's working good. So we'll just let that go for a couple more minutes, and then once I'm sure all the gold's in solution, which probably will only take another couple of minutes, we'll denox it, and I'll get set up to filter it in the meantime. Alrighty, we've got a little bit of foam developing in there. That may have got a bit hotter than I really wanted it to before I turned the heat off. I've got my usual saturated solution of sulfamic acid here we're going to use for denoxing. So this may cause some more foam. Let's see. Oh yeah, got a little bit of extra nitric acid in there, but you know what? We didn't use too much nitric because we only used about 2 milliliters to get this whole process done. The rest of it was done with poor man's nitric. Alright, yeah, we got some excess nitric acid in there. So I got to put this stuff in slowly so it doesn't boil over. We may have got it. Alright, I'll put the rest of this in just to dilute it and make sure that we are very thoroughly denoxed. Okay, I'm going to get some ice. We're going to ice this down. Alright, let me take this off of the still warm hot plate here and put it on the cool plate. And we're going to put some ice to it. And we will let that ice melt, cool and dilute this stuff, then we will filter it. Be able to drop our gold, get our gold back. Alright, so gotta wait for that to melt. Alrighty, it's time to get this stuff filtered. And I'm just gonna gravity filter it. I got cotton stuffed in the bottom of this funnel. I hope that's showing up. It's dark in there. And we'll just filter it that way. There's not a lot of solids in here. So I'm thinking it should probably filter pretty darn quickly. Get a pretty clean filtrate. Yeah, it's starting to come through pretty quick. Alright. So we'll just let that filter. I like the color. Maybe a very slight tinge of green to it. But like I said, that was not probably pure gold on those contacts. Plus, we got some green solder mask in there. So that may be contributing some dye to it, making it green. Now, as for this over here, I poured off the bulk of the water into my waste processing system. I'll get the copper back in there because I keep iron in my waste bucket, so the copper will cement out on the iron. But there's some sediment here that has some little bits of gold in it. So after we get this stuff all through, I'll switch out the receiving beakers and we'll filter this stuff and capture all the little bits of gold in there on the cotton in here. And then I'll put this cotton with my filters and rags for when I process them, get the gold, silver, whatnot out of them. Nothing goes to waste. Alright, so this is just going to take a little while to filter. I may have some lunch while I'm waiting. And then we should be ready to drop the gold. So I'm filtering the sludge from the bottom of this beaker now through here through the same filter. And just going to capture any small flakes of gold in there. This is going really slow because there were a lot of solids in it. That's okay. It can just go while I work on the other stuff over in the fume hood. Alright, there's our gold solution back in the fume hood. And now what we need to do is we need to add some sodium metabisulfite to this to get the gold to drop back out of solution. It should be good clean gold. Now for that we're going to use another stump remover product. We're going to use Stump Out by Boneed. Now don't confuse this with the stump remover we used at the beginning of the video. We used something completely different then. At the beginning of the video, we used Spectracide stump remover, which contains potassium nitrate to make our 4-mens nitric acid. We're not going to use that this time. We're going to use a different product. All this stuff came from the hardware store. And you can find these two different types of stump remover. You're pretty much golden when it comes to doing your own backyard gold refining. Stump Out by Boneed contains sodium metabisulfite, a completely different chemical from what we used earlier with the Spectracide stuff. And this will help us get the gold out of solution. So I'm going to spoon some of this in, and hopefully we'll see some kind of reaction here fairly quickly. A bit lumpy. Let's get some of this in here. Turn the fume hood on. Those bubbles are sulfur dioxide gas. Look at the color change. Look at the color change. Yeah, look at that. Oh yeah, look at the color change. Look at that. Yeah. So what's happening here is the gold is coming back out of solution. It's coming out as a fine powder, precipitating out of solution. And those fine powder flakes of gold are kind of brownish in color the way they scatter the light. So that's why it looks like that. So that's great. We're getting our gold back. We'll just let that sit and settle, and over time the gold should settle to the bottom and hopefully leave a nice clear liquid. All right, so we're just going to let that sit and settle. Well, now look at that. Is that a thing of beauty or what? Yeah, nice layer of gold on the bottom, nice clear liquid up here. I think we got ourselves a good gold drop here. You see a little bit of gold floating on the surface. See if I can get it to sink. Down there with your friends. So what I am going to do is what I usually do. I'm going to clean up this gold, dry it out, and weigh it. First step is I'm just going to pour off this liquid. And I may transfer this to a smaller beaker and start giving the gold some cleanup boils. And from looking at the time-lapse video, it looked like the gold was coming down in pretty big flakes, which is a good sign. So I think it's going to, I hope it's going to agglomerate together nicely during the boils. It settled pretty quickly too, so that's another good sign. I think we've got some pretty good clean gold here. So let me get started cleaning it up. So hopefully before the end of the day, we can get it weighed up. So let me get moving. Oh yeah, this is some good clean gold. As I tilt the beaker, it all slides down to the bottom corner there. It doesn't get up into the water column from the turbulence. So yeah, that's some good clean gold down there. But just in case we do get any in the water column, I am filtering the liquid through a filter here, and I'll just put this filter in my filter and rag storage, and I'll get any gold that it catches back when I process those. And this liquid is going to go into my temporary stock pot. Now, I get a lot of grief from people about not doing enough stannous chloride tests. But I'll tell you what, when your liquid coming off your gold looks like this, I know from experience, there's not enough gold left in there to be detectable. So this is going to go into my temporary stock pot, this liquid is. And it can drop out any tiny bit of remaining gold it may have in there. The liquid will go into my main stock pot eventually, where any values will get cemented out on copper in there eventually. So we're not losing anything. But I think essentially all our gold is right here. And maybe a little tiny bit we're dragging over into the filter. And that's it. Okay, so let me finish this. I will transfer this to a smaller beaker and we will start the cleanup boils. All right, I've transferred the gold to a smaller beaker, got some distilled water on it, heating up for its first cleanup boil. I like to do distilled water first just to dilute whatever chemicals are left on the gold, just in case there's some chlorides and nitrates in there. I don't want the gold going back into solution. So we'll do distilled water first. If the gold looks like it's going to agglomerate together nice, we'll pour off the distilled water. We'll give it muriatic acid boil, and then some more distilled water boils after that to clean up the acid, get it out of the gold. So we'll see how it goes with this first distilled water boil. That'll tell us a lot about the nature of the gold. Well, the first distilled water boil went very well. The gold is pretty well agglomerated together. I am giving it well, it's warming up for a muriatic acid boil now. Then I'll give it about 3 more water boils after I decant off the muriatic acid. Then I'll dry it out and we can weigh it. All right, here we are drying up the gold after its cleanup washes. Looks like a lot, but I'm sure once it's dried up, it's not going to look like so much. Once it's dry, we'll get a weight on it and figure out just how much gold there was in those fingers. Alrighty, I think it's time we found out just how much gold was in those fingers. Let's see here. It's all bottom of this beaker. Break it up here so we can get it out and measure it. That's some good looking gold. The Haven itself, the right color to it, like a reasonably good amount too. Let's see what we got here. A little over 2.5 grams. That is more than I was expecting from that amount of fingers, but I did mention, I think, that some of them were really thick power supply fingers. So maybe that's why there's a bit more there than I was expecting. But I'll take more over less any day. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with that. You guys are happy with it? Give the video a like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to see my future gold recovery videos. There's more stuff on the way. And check out my 2 other channels, Electric Geek 64 and Mike's Lapidarian Fossil. There's good stuff going on those channels all the time. And I will see you in the next video here. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.